What's up YouTube, this is Tubedigga. In this video I'm going to show you how to program TubeSynth to recreate a TB303 bassline sound. Now as you can hear, it's not an exact replication, but it's pretty close considering I'm using something that is quite a bit different from the original TB303 bassline from Roland. But this is much better than using the actual bassline plugin in my opinion, which comes inside the MPC 1, MPC Live, MPC X and MPC software. Before I get into this video, I just want to let you guys know that I've now reinstated my Patreon account. So if you become a patron of mine, I'm actually giving this away this month as a project file, so you'll get access to everything you heard at the start of this video. That's the drum program and of course this preset that I've created in TubeSynth, so you can use it for yourselves and understand how I've programmed it. But in this video I'm going to go through all the parameters anyway. So as ever, I'd like to thank all my current subscribers, anyone that's liked and shared my videos, anyone that follows and supports me on social media, and of course anyone that's been kind enough to donate to this channel. If you'd like to do that yourselves, there's a PayPal link in the description, but as I just said, you can also become a patron on my Patreon account. And if you're interested in private lessons with myself, please contact me at tubedigga@gmail.com. We can do this over Zoom, Google Hangouts or Skype, whatever you prefer. So as said, TubeSynth is much better at recreating something pretty close to the TB303 bassline sound, which pretty much spawned the acid genre of dance music. So I'm going to show you how I've set up TubeSynth in this video. Let's just go through the parameters. So the first page that you see in TubeSynth is the oscillator page, but first of all we need to go to the mixer page and just turn down oscillator 2 so it's at 0. Let's go back to the oscillator page. Now we're just using oscillator 1, so you can see that I've got the octave all the way down at wide. That means that when we use the fine tuning, we can tune the semitones and fine tuning of this oscillator. If you press and hold shift, you can modify the tuning parameter or any of these parameters with finer increments. So if I just click on that, and if I was just to move this like that, obviously it goes fast. If I press undo, if I press shift and move the data wheel, we can fine tune that. So it's pretty simple really. Make sure that you've got somewhat of a square wave here. So I've got a 68% square wave here. So if we move the data wheel, we can get that at exactly 100% square, but you again have to press and hold shift to get that exactly to say square. That's fine, it's still going to sound pretty much the same. So I had mine at 68%, but that's completely fine. Somewhere around there, so you've got a square wave, I found works best for this. Nothing's been changed here for the filter envelope to shape. So if we did increase that, the filter envelope would modulate the shape here, but we don't need to worry about that. We've got the quad switched off, Detuning's at 0, we don't need to worry about that. And we're not using the sub oscillator. As said, oscillator 2 is not in use, so we're done with the oscillator page. Let's go to the filter mixer page. Now you can see that there's some gain applied for oscillator 2, but as said, we're not using it, so all of these parameters are irrelevant. We just need to worry about the mixer page, make sure oscillator 1 is at 100% and oscillator 2 is at 0. I'm not using the sub and I'm not using any ring modulation. So this is the low pass filter here. We don't have any other filter types in TubeSynth, it's just the low pass filter. So I've got the filter cutoff all the way down at the bottom. It doesn't matter if it's at 0 or 1%, but as long as it's pretty much down there at the bottom, you're good to go. I've got the resonance at 92%. Again, this can vary depending on how much squelch and kind of that real acid sound that you want, but you can roll that off and introduce it as the sequence is playing. I've got the drive at 36%, so this is just boosting it a little bit and saturating it to an extent. Over here we've got the filter slope, so mine's set at 9 dBs per octave. Saturation's at 100%. I've got the envelope, which is the key parameter here. That is currently at 70%, but that is going to be modified to give us those kind of acidy squelches and then go back to the kind of muffled sound, that rubbery sound that I've tried to get somewhat close to. Key tracking's at 100%, so that just means the higher the pitch you go, that's going to follow the filter cutoff, but it doesn't really make much difference in the way that I've got it set up because I've got the cutoff all the way down at the bottom and the envelope is pretty much controlling how much brightness that filter is giving to the sound. So that's the filter. Let's go to the envelope page. This is also key. I've got the filter envelope set up like this. It's at pretty much the bottom at the attack, so that's just at 1 milliseconds. I've got 297 milliseconds for the decay, and both the sustain and release are both at their lowest values. The amp envelope is also important to give it a nice short and punchy sound. So we've got the attack just at a kind of relatively small setting here, 9.53 milliseconds. We've got the decay at 116 milliseconds, sustain at 0, and the release at 31.3 milliseconds. And that's why we've got this nice short sound. Over here is envelope 3. You can apply envelope 3 to modify a number of different parameters, but as you can see I'm not using it for this, so the destination is off and therefore we don't need to worry about that. So this is the LFO page. I'm not using any LFO there, so we don't need to worry about that. The setup page is important. When you first create this bassline, if you want to do it from scratch, you need to make sure that in the preset list you're all the way at the bottom and you're looking at a knit. Press on a knit and that will load that in, which is this patch here. So I'm not going to load that in, obviously I'll lose all this. Over in this section you can see that I've got my sound detuned at -20%, but that is just a taste thing, just to tune it to however you want it or tune it to other sounds in your particular project. Over here I'm not using the shape, the width is by the by, it's not really making much difference to this program, and this is the overall output for the sound, so you might want to adjust that to taste as well. The next page is the chorus, which I'm not using, that's switched off. Then we've got delay, I'm not using that, but you're welcome to use that if you want. What I am using is the reverb, the compressor and hype. So I'm using a room with a pretty short time just to give it a bit of space and give it that kind of room ambience, I suppose. And it's, you know, just a bit of the mix is coming in of that reverb, just to give it that bit of air and a bit of ambience. If we turn that down, it's a bit too dry. But of course, if you want it completely dry, just take that out. But I've just got mine set at quite a low level. Then we've got the compressor. So I'll just go quickly through these. -28.9 for the threshold. The ratio's at 1.5.1. The output's at 14.5 dB. I've got a relatively fast attack and relatively short release time. The mix is fully up. Again, this is to taste, just to kind of get it to sit in your mix right if you want to use the compressor in TubeSynth. But of course you can use an insert effect, one of the air compressors or one of the Akai ones, it's fine. So the compressor in this regard is optional, as is hype. I've boosted the high frequencies to give it a bit of sharpness, and I've got a little bit of low frequencies applied there. But again, both of these, the compressor and hype, and of course the reverb, they're all optional if you want. But that's how I've got mine set up. So that's pretty much it. Let me just talk about how I program the bassline. Let's just find the notes. And there's the notes. Now this was just created using the arpeggiator. So I just literally pressed down a load of keys and just made a random pattern. Let's just take a look at the arpeggiator. Let's press note repeat so we can get the arp up. And it's just at 16th notes. It's set to random. It's just looking at 1 octave, so it's not going to go too crazy up and down through the range. But again, these are all parameters that you can just tune for your own taste. Let's just go to track mute and mute the drums. And let's just take a listen. So if you do want to interact with this live or automate these parameters, you can see the key ones to get this to sound close to a TB303 or somewhat close is the filter cutoff, the resonance and the filter envelope with all the current settings which I've just gone through. And that's pretty much it. That's how you create a similar TB303 bassline sound in the MPC using TubeSynth. I highly recommend TubeSynth, way above Bassline, the other plugin program that we've got in here. But it's quite a good synth for doing weird stuff. So don't completely write it off. Please just use it without having an expectation that you can make this kind of sound in it. You can get somewhat close. You can get the higher frequency, zappy, squelchy stuff. But I think it suffers when you try and do the lower stuff. This also does. This can't really replicate that kind of muddy, muffled, rubbery sound which we know and love from the TB303, but it gets somewhat close, I think, in my opinion, and it's not such a bad replication that I've got here. So as said, guys, you can get hold of this project so you can see it and get hands on yourself if you sign up to be one of my patrons on Patreon. And of course, it's not just limited to this. It's all the other weeks in any given month. I'm going to be giving away music downloads, which can be singles, albums, drum programs, breakbeats, and project files such as this. If you want to head over to my Patreon, again, it's www.patreon.com/Tubedigga. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, guys. That's pretty much it. This project will be shared, as I've said, on my Patreon. If you want private lessons with myself, please contact me at tubedigga@gmail.com. And I will see you on the next one. This is Tubedigga, and I'm out.